Did you know Libya once had the highest standard of living in Africa? Free housing, education, and healthcare were the norm, but today, this oil-rich nation lies in ruins, torn apart by rival factions. What caused such a dramatic fall from grace? In this video, we'll explore how Libya went from a utopian paradise to a chaotic war zone and the shocking reasons behind its collapse. Welcome to Libya during its golden age, a time when this North African nation boasted the highest standard of living on the continent. Picture a country where citizens enjoyed a level of prosperity that seemed almost too good to be true. Thanks to its vast oil reserves, Libya transformed into a paradise of social benefits that most countries could only dream of. Did you know that in Libya, housing wasn't just affordable, it was free? The government provided newlyweds with apartments or houses at no cost, eliminating the stress of finding a home. But that's not all. Young couples also received farmland, livestock, and seeds, encouraging agricultural development and self-sufficiency. Education and healthcare were entirely free, from primary school to university, and even for students studying abroad. The government funded higher education for Libyans overseas, providing up to $2,500 plus accommodation expenses. Hospitals and clinics were accessible to all without financial burden, ensuring a healthy population. Transportation was a breeze, with the government covering half the cost of car purchases. Fuel prices were incredibly low, at just 14 cents per liter, making daily commutes and road trips affordable for everyone. Even unemployment wasn't a significant concern. Graduates who couldn't find work immediately received a salary from the government, providing a safety net for young professionals. But beneath this veneer of prosperity, political issues were brewing. While Libyans enjoyed material comforts, they lacked political freedoms. The nation's wealth came at a price, one that wasn't immediately apparent but would have far-reaching consequences. Libya's economy relied heavily on oil exports, making it vulnerable to global price fluctuations. Gaddafi's unconventional approach to oil transactions, selling it for gold rather than traditional currencies, positioned Libya as a challenger to global financial norms. What do you do when your country is mostly desert, but you need to feed millions? If you're Muammar Gaddafi, you build the world's largest irrigation project. Let's dive into the Great Man-Made River Project, a monumental undertaking that promised to turn Libya's barren landscape into a lush agricultural paradise. But at what cost? Libya faced significant food security challenges due to its arid climate and limited arable land. The country heavily relied on food imports to feed its growing population, a situation that Gaddafi saw as a vulnerability. His solution: tap into the vast underground aquifers beneath the Sahara Desert and bring that water to the coastal regions where most Libyans lived. The scale of the Great Man-Made River Project is truly mind-boggling. Imagine an intricate network of pipes and aqueducts stretching for nearly 1,750 miles, all buried beneath the scorching sands of the Sahara. This isn't just a pipeline. It's an entire artificial river system designed to transport water from ancient aquifers deep in the desert to the thirsty cities and potential farmlands along the coast. The technical challenges were immense. Engineers had to design pipes that could withstand extreme temperature fluctuations and the corrosive effects of sand and water. Massive pumping stations were built to move the water across vast distances and varying elevations. It was a feat of engineering that rivaled some of the greatest infrastructure projects in history. Initially, the project showed promising results. As water began flowing to coastal areas, there was a surge of optimism about Libya's agricultural potential. The government envisioned vast tracts of desert blooming with crops, reducing the country's reliance on food imports and creating a new sector of the economy. However, as the project progressed, concerns began to surface. Experts questioned the long-term sustainability of tapping into these ancient water sources. How long would these aquifers last? What would be the environmental impact of such massive water extraction? And then there were the economic costs. Maintaining this vast infrastructure would require ongoing investment, potentially draining resources from other sectors of the economy. The Great Man-Made River Project came to symbolize both the ambition and the overreach of Gaddafi's Libya. On one hand, it demonstrated the country's ability to undertake massive infrastructure projects and its commitment to addressing critical issues like food security. On the other, it highlighted the risks of over-reliance on a single solution and the potential for misallocation of resources in a centrally planned economy. In 2011, Libya stood at a crossroads. Despite its vast oil wealth and ambitious infrastructure projects, discontent simmered among its people. How did a country that seemed to have everything suddenly lose it all? The answer lies in the growing tensions and inequalities that had been building for years. While Libya's oil wealth provided generous social benefits, political repression and corruption were rampant. Many Libyans felt voiceless and trapped in a system that enriched the elite while stifling dissent. The spark that ignited the 2011 uprising came from neighboring countries. Inspired by the Arab Spring movement sweeping across the region, Libyans took to the streets in February, demanding change. What started as peaceful protests quickly escalated into violent clashes as government forces cracked down on demonstrators. The collapse of Gaddafi's regime was swift and dramatic. Rebel forces, emboldened by international support, rapidly advanced across the country. Major cities fell one by one, and by October 2011, Gaddafi was captured and killed, marking the end of his 42-year rule. In the power vacuum that followed, Libya fragmented into competing factions. The National Transitional Council initially took control, but it soon faced challenges from various militias and political groups. Each claimed legitimacy, plunging the country into a prolonged struggle for power. The international community's response further complicated the situation. NATO's intervention, which provided air support to rebel forces, was controversial. While it helped topple Gaddafi, some argue it contributed to the chaos that followed by creating a power imbalance without a clear plan for stability. The toll of the civil war was devastating. An estimated 30,000 people lost their lives, with over 50,000 injured. Countless others were displaced, fleeing the violence that engulfed their communities. The economy, once buoyed by oil exports, plummeted. Oil production dropped from 1.6 million barrels per day before the war to less than 400,000 barrels per day by 2012. As the dust settled, the extent of Libya's fragmentation became clear. The country was now divided between rival governments, militias, and extremist groups like Ansar al-Sharia. The dream of a democratic transition had given way to a nightmarish reality of ongoing violence and instability. Imagine waking up one day to find your country split in two, with rival governments each claiming legitimacy. For Libyans, this isn't a hypothetical scenario, it's their daily reality. Let's unpack how this bizarre political situation came to be, and what it means for the future of this once prosperous nation. Today's Libya is a far cry from the oil-rich paradise it once was. The country is now governed by two competing administrations: the Government of National Unity in the west, led by Prime Minister Abdulhamid Dbeibah, and a separate administration in the east under Prime Minister Osama Hamad. This political divide is more than just a power struggle. It's tearing the very fabric of Libyan society apart. Remember the days when Libya boasted free housing, education, and healthcare. Those luxuries are now a distant memory. The ongoing instability has taken a heavy toll on public services. Many Libyans are facing deteriorating living standards, struggling to access even basic necessities. Schools that once provided free education now struggle to keep their doors open. Hospitals, once bastions of free healthcare, now grapple with shortages of essential supplies and personnel. The challenges of rebuilding Libya's infrastructure and institutions are daunting. Years of conflict have left roads, power grids, and water systems in disrepair. Government buildings stand as shells of their former selves, symbolic of the fractured state apparatus. The task of reconstruction is made even more difficult by the lack of a unified government to oversee and coordinate these efforts. Despite these challenges, there are glimmers of hope. International efforts to stabilize Libya continue, with various global powers engaging with local factions to support peace initiatives. However, the effectiveness of these interventions remains a subject of debate. Some see them as crucial steps towards reconciliation, while others view them as potential sources of further complication. Experts cautiously express optimism about Libya's future, emphasizing the need for a unified political framework. They stress the importance of addressing the underlying social and economic grievances that continue to fuel conflict. The path forward is fraught with obstacles, but many Libyans hold on to the hope of one day rebuilding their nation into a stable and prosperous home for all.